Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this program presented by the African American Museum in Philadelphia. My name is Ivan Henderson. I'm our Vice President of Programming, which means I have the honor and privilege of working with the people directly at the museum who produce our exhibitions, who take care of our collections, and who also produce our public and educational programming. One of the real delights of my job here is also interfacing with our core of volunteer docents. So we're here tonight for a meeting of our bi-monthly book club, and I'll just talk a little bit about that. This book club was born out of necessity during a very strange year and a very strange time, but for us represents a way for our community of adult learners who are our docents, our tour guides, to continue with their professional development, continue to learn together, and continue to develop new ways to teach all of our core messages at the African American Museum in Philadelphia. But to be honest, I'm just proud because this is a relatively new development for our museum and for this group. And so that even during difficult times and with scarcity, we continue to be creative and try to find new ways to connect tissue to some of the bones of history that we hold in our artifacts and in our core exhibitions. So on their behalf, and on behalf of our staff, our board, and all the rest of our volunteers and members, thank you all for joining us today. Before I go further, I want to encourage you and ask you to support the African American Museum in Philadelphia. Our doors do remain closed due to the results of the international pandemic, yet we are finding creative ways to continue to serve our communities. So support us through your patronage, through your donations, through your volunteerism, and of course through your advocacy, as we all try to figure out a way forward for cultural institutions moving forward. I encourage you to visit www.aampmuseum.org to find out all the ways you can interface and interact with us and find out ways to access and enjoy our numerous resources. So every couple of months, our book club meets to discuss either a new or very important book. So either something that's hot off the presses or something that's topically relevant at the time. And these books are usually linked to one of our temporary exhibitions or some event on the Black American calendar like Kwanzaa or Juneteenth. And also in conjunction with our our permanent exhibition, Audacious Freedom, which is why we chose this book this evening. So without further ado, I want to proudly introduce you to our two host and discussion leaders for this evening who will introduce our guest, our docents, Carolyn Singleton and Elisa Rashid. Thank you both.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Ivan. So again, welcome to our book club meeting here at the African American Museum in Philadelphia. My name is Elisa Rashid, and I'm one of the facilitators for tonight's discussion. And my co-facilitator is Carolyn Singleton. Hi, Carolyn.
Hello, everyone. Ms. Jenkins.
Yeah.
Yes. So this month's book selection is Indigo by Miss Beverly Jenkins. Indigo is a historical romance novel that predates the Civil War. Love, the struggle for freedom, community, relationships, and the Underground Railroad are just some of the themes that dominate the story. So let me tell you a little bit about Miss Jenkins. Miss Jenkins is the nation's premier writer of African American historical romance fiction and specializes in 19th century African American life. She is a USA Today's best-selling author, an NAACP Image Award nominee, and the 2017 recipient of Romance Writers of America Nora Roberts Lifetime Achievement Award. She has over 49 published works and has been featured in many major publications, including the NYT, People's Magazine, the WSJ, and on NPR and CBS Sunday Morning. She speaks widely on African American history, romance, and writing. And some of her work has been opinion by Sonia Television and Al Rucker Entertainment. So, Miss Beverly.
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome. To the African American Museum, it is a pleasure to have you here.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Um, I want to thank the museum for this great introduction and for this great invitation. It's always wonderful to be able to speak to institutions that uphold our culture and are focused on our history. So if you're ready for me to start, I'm ready to go.
Okay, but before we start, I just want to share with you. I read your book, as we say in the African American community, it was all of that and some.
Thank you.
I like to say that I like the way that you connected with the intimate and the love scenes with historical history. So you're doing two things. You're telling them, you're talking about relationship, Black love that is center within the novel, but you also dropping those gems of historical information that people can take and research further. So, I mean, it's all that. That's all I can say. So before we start, and before you go into, I would like for you to begin by reading those two letters that David sent to his sister Catherine that were done very beautifully. But can you share with us, when did you start writing, and how did you decide that romance novels focusing on Black love in the 19th century was something you had a passion for and wanted to write about? Because that is your gift.
Yeah, I hadn't, I wasn't going to be a writer. I
Okay.
had no intentions of being a writer. All I ever wanted to do was work in a library. That was it, because books were my thing. My mom was an avid reader.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people she was Black before it was fashionable. She was born in 28 in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I grew up with African American history in my home. So, I mean, it's a long story and it's very convoluted, but needless to say, Avon Books called me on my husband's birthday, June 3rd, 1993, and wanted to buy the book, which is Night Song. My
Mm-hmm.
first book, Buffalo Soldier, Oberlin educated school teacher. And the rest, they say, is history. I've been at this now 27 years. I call what I do edutainment, entertainment and education.
Yes, it is.
Because if I had written a history book, nobody would have read it. You know, we have a lot of great historians out there, and their books are sort of languishing because only people like me and you guys and those
Mm-hmm.
of us who love the history are reading it. So
Mm-hmm.
this was a great way to give you a good love story, give you a good background in the history behind the Underground Railroad. Each book has a different theme
Mm-hmm.
written about the 19th century African American doctors who
Mm-hmm.
did their study in Pennsylvania. I've got the Black
Okay.
and Brown Outlaws of Indian Territory. So, you know, we could be talking about this forever and I'd never get to my speech. So, you know, look at my website. All of the books are listed there in both
Yes.
publication order and series order.
Mm-hmm.
So that's who I am basically.
Yes, indeed. I can see you have two gifts. As I said before, you have a knack for that romance and really coming to attention to detail in history. I can see that you're a history person. I'm a history person. So those gems that you dropped throughout the book, I know you knew what you were doing. That's
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
All right, so Beverly, can you start off reading those two letters that really sets the tone of the novel and really takes you into some of the adventures and some of the things that
Yeah.
to come?
Yeah. These are two letters that are at the beginning of the book. They are from a free man who is writing to he's from Michigan. He's writing to his sister in Michigan. And I'll explain the source behind the letters when
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. So, first letter, September 7th, 1831. Dearest Catherine, I hope my letter finds you well. I am aware it has been over a year since my last correspondence, but circumstances have prevented me from writing before now. Dearest sister, all my life, you have cautioned me against making rash decisions. And had I taken your wise counsel to heart, maybe I would not be paying so dearly for that flaw now, but the die is cast. For the love of a woman named Frances Greeton, I have forsaken all that I am and given my freedom over to her master. I am a slave now, Catherine. My worth is no longer measured by how well I can steer a ship, or the languages I've mastered, or the lands I own, but rather by my strength, my weight, and the health of my teeth. According to Master Greeton, I am very valuable, much like a prized steer. To her credit, Frances was furious upon learning what I had done and refused to speak to me for days, but Catherine, to be near her, I would carry water in hell. This is a hard life, especially for those in the fields. Master Greeton has for the present put me to work in his clerk's office, where I help with ledgers and accounts. I realize now, after much raging from Frances, that I could have arranged to be with her in a less dramatic fashion, but at the time, the captain of my ship refused to delay leaving port until a more rational solution could be found. So I chose love over freedom, possibly the last choice I will ever make in this life. Frances will give birth to our first child, and Greeton has agreed to keep our family together in exchange for my lifelong servitude, but Francis doubts the pledge will be honored by his heirs. Sometimes we to pass on. Excuse me, especially if our child is male. So she and I have made a pact to somehow send our child north to you. No child should be made to suffer the repercussions of my decision. Slavery is truly an abomination against God. I am risking much in posting this letter to you, as it is against the law. But I cannot let you think I have died at sea. Pray for me. Your loving brother, David Wyatt. Second letter, December 12, 1833. My dearest Catherine, my worst fears have come true. The old Master Greeton died in a carriage accident, and as Frances predicted, Greeton the younger did not honor his father's pledge. My Frances has been sold deep south. The anguish and rage I feel over our forced parting pales in the face of the horror of watching the child of our love sold also. Her name is Hester. Greeton's ledgers say she has been sold to the Sea Islands of the Carolinas to a man named Weston. Find her, Catherine. Move heaven and earth, but find her. If you must, offer the owner everything I possess in both land and monies to secure her freedom. Alas, it is too late for me. I have contracted a wasting disease that will not let me see the new year. My Frances is gone from me forever, and I grieve for her every day. However, I will go to my grave less haunted if I know Hester is safe in your loving care. To help you in identifying Hester, Frances severed the tip of the little finger of her left hand the day she was born, in anticipation of this tragedy. Both Hester and Frances cried for days after the severing, but the cut healed clean. I relinquish all my accumulated Michigan properties, possessions, to you in Hester's name. Goodbye, dear sister. My love for you will live on in my sweet daughter, your brother, David Wyatt. So the source of that, those letters, and it was really interesting because I had already started the book, and the letters came to me like a third of the way through.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost as if he tapped me on the shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
wanted me to write these letters to his sister. But it's based on a real kind of an incident. I was looking through the book Bullwhip Days,
Mm-hmm.
compilation of the rememberings and the memories of
Right.
enslaved people that was done during the 30s in the by the WPA.
Yeah,
And,
WPA.
and in the section on love and marriage, there was a quote that said, this was the freed the freedman saying, he knew a man named Wyatt who was free, who had sold himself into slavery for the love of a woman. And that stopped my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Never, I mean, that's love. And then he finished it by saying, that love must be a terrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I asked my late husband now, but I asked him, if would you sell your? He's like, I don't know, baby, I love you dearly, but and I felt the same way. I like, I don't know.
Oh no.
Yeah. But to offer your freedom in exchange for love. So, romance being a feel good kind of genre, and we
Mm-hmm.
always insist on the HEA at the end, which is the happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no HEA in slavery. I
Yeah,
mean, Francis could have been sold that very next day,
that's
as
right.
opposed to a year later. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it came to me, what if I wrote about their daughter? And if she was,
Mm-hmm.
Catherine was some kind of way able to find her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, she is found for those who, it's a spoiler,
Oh,
but
that's okay. Let's go.
she
Okay,
is,
go ahead, Miss Beverly. That's
she
okay.
is found. And
Mm-hmm.
when we see her, she's grown and living in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
She's a conductor on the Underground Railroad. And another thing I had to wrestle with was, how do you, how would you, what would you do to a child so that they could be found?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you, and and I weighed, well, you could crop the lobe of her ear,
Right. That's right.
or and it would have to be something visible, but something that wouldn't hurt her very much, or
Mm-hmm.
her abilities, to work
Mm-hmm.
since she was enslaved.
That's right.
So I settled on and babies back then, the bones are not really hard yet.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was the least traumatic
Mm-hmm.
thing you could do, so that if somebody did come looking for her, they would know what to look for and how to find her.
That's right.
So we used the tip of the little left hand, the little finger on the left hand,
Mm-hmm.
to sever that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's how that came to be. So
Because when I seen that, I was thinking, the first thing I was thinking about in African culture, you have certain marks in to identify certain ethnic groups
right.
and rites of passage. So when you put that in there, I said, how ingenious is
Yeah.
Beverly? And so you this is something that you made up, or this is something through your research that you just, found out?
I made that up, but
Ooh,
there
that was
is
good.
in my fourth book,
Mm-hmm.
Through the Storm. Um,
Okay.
we have a young woman who is given those rites of passage scarifications
Yes.
when she's a young girl. So
Mm-hmm.
and that I took from the African continent, but
Yes.
but with Hester, it was like I need to come up with an American solution, and the American solution was to crop that finger. So yeah,
And that's good, because what happens is when people come from the continent, they bring their ways of knowing. And what we do, because of our experience here, then, different things come out of it. And you show that when you said sever the finger, and you would rather sever the tip of the finger, as opposed to going through some of the things that she may have to experience. And if
right,
any way that they could get her out of that predicament without being going through a lot of trauma. But
yeah,
that was good.
okay,
Oh, yeah, that really, when I seen that, I thought African culture and those cultural ways.
yeah.
Oh, let's talk about the Black Daniel.
Mm,
That's what I say. So you got this man who is like larger than life. I mean, he is one of the key people on the Underground Railroad, one of the conductors and everything else. So you have him, and he has money. I mean, he was enslaved, but they managed to come out and accumulate some money. And then you have him coming out of New Orleans. And we
Right.
know that the French and the Spanish and, all those groups came in, and then eventually the United States. So could you talk about about developing the Black Daniel? Is it Galen Vashon?
Galen Vashon. Vashon.
Vashon.
Yeah, I
All
want
right.
to because a lot of times we don't know a lot about our culture. And this was
Right.
1996.
Yep.
This was my third book.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to highlight the Jean de Couleur of Louisiana,
Mm-hmm.
color, the cultures of color,
Yes.
um, because of their influence on Louisiana culture,
Yes.
because of their wealth, because of their the National Guard, their military,
Mm-hmm.
saved
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Jackson's butt during the War 1812.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And with him, I mean, you could also do things like colorism.
Yes.
You could do community. So, and then I have the juxtaposition of this very, very light skinned guy,
Mm-hmm.
very, very dark skinned woman.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as I was, talking to Ivan earlier, during the touring of that book in
Mm-hmm.
1996,
Mm-hmm.
Black women were weeping everywhere I went
Mm.
because the colorism issue. Because
Yes.
skin women, which I call the darker roses of the race,
Mm-hmm.
uh, had never been centered
That's right.
a story like that before,
That's right. That is right.
and they were so overcome by that.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of women who said it changed their perceptions of themselves
Mm-hmm.
and their spot in the world and how they viewed themselves. I mean, it was people was crying. I did a talk at Princeton years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it was about romance novels, and because one of the professors there is a romance scholar,
Mm-hmm.
and I read those letters, and people were weeping all over the room. The guys were crying, the women were crying. I told my mom, I said the drapes were crying. Everybody was crying, because they are so powerful. So, but Galen he's a romance hero. We see a lot of different layers of him,
Yes.
how he was treated by his grandmother,
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
his place in society,
Mm-hmm.
mostly, how much he loved Hester,
Yes, indeed.
and and his letting her know how much he loved
Yes.
her. I mean, he
Yes.
told her, you don't need to wear the gloves with me.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
I think you said your little purple hands, your little purple toes are
Yeah.
are fine with me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
mm,
I agree. And I think because he understood, this is enslavement. These are some of the things, the vestiges that come with that type of thing, being in that time. And
yeah,
so what I liked about him and the fact you had him so light that he can move between the two worlds.
hmm
Since he decided that this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to be, you know, do these underground railroad activities. So he was a benefit because he could have easily, his family had money. He didn't
yeah,
have to do that. So you created this person that was very passionate and
yeah,
understood what the community mean and what did they mean to each other.
yeah. Because
Black African American community. He
he could,
reminded me of Robbie Purvis.
Yeah, he could have easily passed, right? Right.
Yeah.
I have another hero in book 4. Oh, the same book where with the young woman with the scarification. And
Right.
her brother is light enough to pass.
Mm-hmm.
He was like 8 years old, and he went
Mm-hmm.
to the dining room with his half brother.
Mm-hmm.
They're having dinner, and so he decides. This is through the book is through the storm.
Mm-hmm.
Decides after he and his brother go to war for the Confederacy, and they go to one battle, and they're like, "Okay, we're out of this." His brother frees, and he goes and joins the Union Army as a white man.
Okay.
And when we see him, you know, for I don't know, 10, 15 years later
Mm-hmm.
in Silver City, Nevada, living life as a white man, but
Mm-hmm.
everything he can for the Black community. Because
Right.
you know, through literature, when you get these, get these mulattoes, these tragic mulattoes, and they don't know where they stand, and they wind up harming themselves. I mean, just I don't do stereotypes.
Right. That's right.
So his name is Ryan Fontaine.
Mm-hmm.
I told the ladies, because they were all like, "Where's Ryan? Where's Ryan?" After the book was published, I'm like, "I don't know where he is." But when I find him, I'm going to give him the darkest woman I could find.
Mm-hmm.
The man have to make a choice. And so this is the book that Sony has optioned. So you can have these very, very light-skinned guys
Mm-hmm.
step outside of that stereotype of what
Yes.
mulattoes mean to the community
Exactly.
and do as much and still have that commitment to the community, but do it in a way that's, you know, that's not real. I mean, the Black people in the community, of course, knew he was Black, but the
Right.
white people did not know,
That's
So
right.
he was a high-ranking Republican. He had made all this money.
Mm-hmm.
He was the only person that was giving loans to the Black business people,
Mm-hmm.
guaranteeing people's houses, helping with the orphanage and all of that. So Galen is the first of my heroes to
Step out
wear
of it.
that history. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And it was good because it showed a different light because you have, in some cases, some mulattoes, because they do have the color, look down on
oh yeah,
darker skinned people. And
yeah,
that was one of the problems that Galen's mother, his grandmother, was angry at her daughter because she married a darker man and she wanted to keep in the family. So, when she seen Hester, because the way you describe her, deep, dark, beautiful, it's
yeah,
like, no, no, no,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
no, no, no.
yeah. But she dies, and as his aunt said, she's
Mhm.
roasting slowly in hell. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so and just like was Foster's little girlfriend um, asked him, "Well, do you consider yourself Black?"
Mhm.
And he was like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
He's like, "Who are you, the race police?" So yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so you had him speak French, and I was thinking because of the influences of those people who came in and that part of the world, it's the French and the Spanish and all
Well,
the
there's a lot of Haitian blood.
yes, there's a
Well,
lot of Haitian, but and those layers that are in that in New Orleans.
and they speak French.
Yeah,
So
he speaks fluent French and as well, but then again, it comes with the education and the money that his family has.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, how about Hester? You started off, you said something about her being one of the central characters, which I love, because you made a point to say dark skin.
Yeah,
But let's talk about her because you have her strong because she
yeah,
was specialized in those activities of, doing abolitionist work and being a conductor and have to deal with some kind of flack from some of the men in the church who felt that women shouldn't be doing that. So that's another part of some politics.
yeah. Gender roles. Yeah,
Yep, gender. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, we can talk a little bit more about Hester, and coming from because she went down to New Orleans. South Carolina.
yeah. She's a baby.
Yeah, and I forgot all about the dye plantation until you put that in the book.
Yeah, She is a product of me seeing the movie Daughters of the Dust.
Yes. Okay.
And in that movie, Julie Dash has African Americans who are living in that area who worked in the indigo plantations.
Mm-hmm.
Hands and their feet are stained from dealing
Mm-hmm.
with the plant.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a permanent stain. So when she is found, she's probably 8 or 9 years old.
Yes, but 8 or 9.
And she's been, handling the plant, and they use their feet like folks do grapes
Mm-hmm.
with the plant. And, me and my girlfriends went, I have a group of women that I travel with. We do
Mm-hmm.
travel every 2 years. We do history tours, and, there's like 50 of us, and, we have just a great time. And we went out to Ossabaw Island, which is one of the sea islands off the coast of
Yes, it is. Oh,
And,
yes.
um,
Mhm.
and I mean, if you look at the plant, I mean, it didn't look like anything that, I would expect the plant to look like. I mean, it looks just like a everyday, it's
Mhm.
indigo color,
Mhm.
any of that. So I was
Mhm.
very surprised as to what the plant actually looked like. But
Mhm.
um, it was, they used it for things like the uniforms for the British, that
Mhm.
blue uniforms that you see. And so it was permanent. So when she comes north, um, she's very, very conscious of,
Mhm.
of her hands, and she wears gloves when she's out in public to hide her hands. I don't write weak women. I never do, because
Yeah, because she's.
I mean, we can't afford, we couldn't afford to be weak
Mhm.
as we pass through time.
Mhm.
Dorothy Sterling has a book called We Are Your Sisters, Black Women of the 19th Century.
Mhm.
One of
Mhm.
my Bibles with a little b that I used for a lot of the research.
Mhm.
And Miss Sterling says Black women had three, I call them gifts, that they had that let them be so successful after the Civil War. And the first one was that they worked, slave and free, they worked.
Mhm.
Second gift was a commitment to community and social activism.
Mhm.
And the third one was pushing the envelope on gender and race. So whenever I am constructing, or a heroine shows up in my books, she has either one, two, or three of those gifts. And Hester had all three.
Yes.
Worked as a slave. Um, she didn't have a whole lot of work to do in Michigan, but she sold apples because she had to feed herself. She lived
Right.
by herself. Of course, she's very, very active in the community.
Mhm.
Um, very, very active with abolitionists and pushing the gender on race, and pushing the envelope on gender and race,
Yes. She did.
being a conductor on the railroad.
You're right.
So she's a little bit of all three. So um,
Strong.
yeah, very strong.
Strong.
And,
She
and
reminds.
and this book is taught in a lot of university classes. And I had a back and forth kind of a conversation with one class, and I don't remember which university it was, because I'm
Mhm.
speaking
Mhm.
every year. But this young woman said to me, she said, "But why was she so innocent? Why was she so innocent?" And I said, well, you have to remember, this is not 2000.
Exactly.
And women barely went 10 miles their whole life, 10 miles away from where they were born.
That's right.
No, and she just didn't get it. She just could not
Right.
understand why, and no matter how many, how I tried to fix it for her, she just kept saying, but she was so innocent. I'm like, girl, there was no iPhones, there was no
Exactly.
Instagram,
Right.
there was no Twitter, no Facebook,
That's right.
have television or radio, you know,
Exactly.
trying to explain that to young people, as to, well, some young people, because a lot of young people get it, but some young people, she just she just could not compute that. She's just like,
That's
no,
right.
I don't.
See, because women had a certain role. And
Yeah,
it's just that. Because they said Hester shouldn't have been the conductor of the Underground Railroad. So there's certain roles that they have tied to women, women should be doing.
right.
And
All we should be doing is having babies. That was it.
that's all, even in all areas, even in intimacy. And that was good that you had the book set up that way. Certain things you shouldn't do. And
Yeah.
even just exposing themselves or just walking by.
Yeah.
I understand that back
They
then.
didn't take off all their clothes to make love.
Look, let me tell you something.
Dressed. Everybody fully dressed. I'm like, really?
Well,
But those are the kinds of things that you put in the book
yeah,
in order for it to be, you want to try and be as historically accurate as you can.
yeah, and you were pretty good. Yes.
You read the diaries, you read the letters,
Mm-hmm.
all of that. The women of that era were not big fans of Frederick Douglass.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
They loved his advocacy and all of that, but the way he treated his wife, oh, the sisters were not happy.
Mm-hmm.
Were not happy. So, you get some of that um, in some of my books too, because, you want to go with what's historically accurate and what people were thinking and how people were dealing and all of that. So
Yes.
little pieces.
Yep, you dropped some gems. Now, Beverly, you and I could just talk.
I can,
But I do, yeah, Miss Beverly, but I do have a co-facilitator, and she's giving me the eyes.
I know. Well,
She's gonna call me in a minute and say, "Now listen, you with them big eyes, is enough."
I know, and
Actually, I'm enjoying the conversation. Actually,
those old Black teachers that I had in Detroit in the fourth grade put me on stage in the fourth grade, and I've been on stage ever since. I've never met a microphone I did not like. We could be here till Tuesday, with just telling stories and answering questions and all of that. But thank you, Lisa. Those were great. It was a great conversation, my dear. Great conversation.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like I said, I will be getting the new book.
Okay.
So I'm going to transfer it over to Carolyn. Carolyn, you on?
I'm on.
Will you call me?
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. I loved your book. I loved it. I loved the combination of the romance and the history, and I just felt as though I experienced every emotion on the spectrum of emotion, as I was reading it. So I have a couple of questions, but I wanted you to know that members of the group have also submitted a couple of questions through the chat. So I want to give you, I want to ask you a couple of those questions.
That's fine. That's fine.
So,
That's fine.
one of the questions, has gender politics and recent social justice movements influenced the way you portray romantic relationships?
Not really. Romance is all about, the older books don't hold up real well. Not my older books, but the older books that started off the, what we call modern romance.
Right.
Don't hold up really well because they were rapey. It's might as well say that they were rapey. But for the last probably 20 years, romance has been all about consent.
Yes.
So you have the influences of consent, but my books have always been about consent.
Yes.
The big thing now, but my books have always been about consent. So, and then the social issues, I look at what's happening today, and having spent most of my writing life in the 19th century, the same thing we were doing right after the Civil War. It's Reconstruction all over again. This is redemption. After the Civil War, after they gutted Reconstruction in 1876, and the country gave the secessionists and the traitors back their toys, and they instituted a different version of slavery with the work contracts and all of that.
That's right.
The Klan was rising and the White Camellia Leagues were rising. This is the same thing we're going through right now.
Yes, it is.
In reaction to, in my mind, in reaction to Barack Obama's presidency
Mm-hmm.
and the changes that are coming to this country demographically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so in looking at the social issues in my books and looking at the social issues today,
Mm-hmm.
they're about the same.
Mm,
Yes.
They're about the same. So
Yes.
yeah.
okay. All right.
Yes.
I'd say
Yep.
the only thing that's changed is the calendar, technology, what we wear, our clothing. Not
And
everything else is
and and the Klan is no longer wearing the hoods.
That's
oh,
right.
You know, that's the only thing that's different. The Klan is no longer wearing the hoods. But okay, great question.
Okay. Next question. Someone did ask, why did you make Gallon French? But I think you already addressed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another question, what was the one thing you learned about Black people's involvement in the Underground Railroad at the time of writing this book that surprised you? What's one thing that surprised you about the involvement of Black people in the Underground Railroad?
The traders.
Mm.
Ah,
The,
yes.
the traders.
Mhm.
There weren't a lot documented, but there were Black people that were riding with the slave catchers
Mhm.
Mhm.
for whatever reasons. Um, what's her name? Patty on the East Coast had Black people, riding with her. Uh,
Yep.
and the couple bodies that they found,
Mhm.
in the rivers of Ohio from traders.
Mm.
Um, for me, that was the most surprising thing, because you would think that everybody would be on the side of justice.
Mhm.
Yes.
If you look at people in general, though, you're always gonna have somebody that's, you know, what is it? All kinfolk ain't all skin folk ain't kinfolk, or all
Mhm.
kinfolk, however it goes.
Right.
We see
So
that today.
you're gonna have those traders, but that was one of the surprising things for me.
Mhm.
Yeah, one of the things that I know, the price on Gallon's head was $500, and when I looked that up in today's monetary value, it was close to $16,000, and so that was a pretty penny.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. And they
yeah,
wanted him dead or alive, and preferably dead.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have another question. Why did Gallon have to stay in jail so long? Um, and then it says, where was he a king?
A king.
He wasn't a king.
He wasn't a
Yeah, I
king.
don't know if I'm reading the writing correctly, but it does say, why did Gallon have to stay in jail so long?
When
Yeah.
was he in jail?
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe this is a different book.
No, he was in jail for 3 years. He was in jail for 3 years for stealing, as they
Oh,
say,
yeah, yeah, okay.
stealing human
But
beings.
the
Yeah,
king, the king
Yeah.
section, I don't know what the king, why was,
Yeah.
where
But
was
he was there for 3 years.
oh
Okay.
yeah, okay. That was like they're gonna make you. I mean, they didn't have like general like bail kind of things, and it
Mhm,
was up to the jailers how long you stayed, and this
mhm.
was to teach him a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and his grandmother sure wasn't going to bail him out,
No.
because he hadn't told his people what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I forget details sometimes because I'm 40 books past that. So yeah, he was in jail for 3 years. I'm sorry.
Mm.
Uh, I mean, if you look at the history, I mean, that could have been his sentence. They could have sentenced him for 20 years. And
That's
Mhm.
right.
they could
That's
have
right.
branded him too, because they would often brand what they called slave stealers.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. The character Foster,
Yes.
and the one thing that made me chuckle was when he was referred to as Fausty.
Yeah. By
Faust.
Miss Janine. Yeah.
Yeah. So could you discuss the two characters, Gallon versus, I shouldn't say versus, but
But it was verses. I mean,
and then you have Foster.
yeah, Galen thought it was verses. Um,
Yes.
you know, Foster represented another I mean, we got Fosters walking around today, you know,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Fosters walking around today.
Right.
Um, that represent, you know, the quote unquote intelligentsia.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm educated and you're not.
Right, exactly.
And he he was so gullible. Oh my God.
Hmm.
I actually think that she actually loved him. And then, you know, they were going to have a relationship, he and Hester, that was not based on love. It was, you know, based on,
Hmm.
you know, supposedly intelligence and, you know, their respect for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And she was going to settle for that,
Right.
you know, until Galen was like, no, you're not going to do that. You know, we're going to get rid of Foster. I mean, because you remember should I kill him? She said, don't kill the poor man, you know. So, um, two different men offering her two different levels of life,
Mm-hmm.
and it has nothing to do with wealth.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Foster was going to offer her a very, very sterile kind of book-based life, and Galen was going to offer her the world. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have picked Galen. I'm sorry, I'd have picked Galen.
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely, but absolutely, Beverly. And once Galen finished with her, he wasn't going to go nowhere.
No,
I
no.
have someone here who said, I loved how Galen referred to him as Frederick.
Yeah, he kept, and he did that deliberately. He did that deliberately.
I'm glad she chose to live her life with Galen.
Mhm.
And then someone, and it's a male, said yes, especially given women's attitudes toward the famous Frederick of the day, made me laugh. Okay. And as I was reading it, and I shared with Alyssa, I said, if I met, and I have met Fosters, okay,
Yeah, we've all had Fosters in our lives. I just,
I'm a jerk.
go take
Yeah,
a seat, please. Leave me alone. Go take a seat. My girlfriend said, "No, I'm not kissing any more frogs. No, go
no,
away."
no, no, no.
I have another question here. It says, do the 19th century, let's see. Okay, here it is. Does the 19th century have anything to teach us today about Black relationships and love that your books help us with? Does the 19th century have anything to teach us today about Black relationships and love?
I think,
Because they were the best.
I think that the love that we had then
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is the same love that we have now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because love is love.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, there's people out there you don't have no relationship with at all. I mean, there's men you want to run over with your car. There's, brothers got women they want to run over with their cars. But for those who have a true relationship, you
That's
lean
the
on
key.
each other.
Mm-hmm.
You come from dealing with whatever is out in that world and come home to the balm,
Mhm.
BLM, that love has, you have for each other. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we had a real problem as romance writers getting publishers to believe that Black men actually love their wives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They couldn't envision
Mhm.
bringing their wives or their girlfriends
Mm-hmm.
headpieces, uh, flowers for Valentine's Day.
Wow.
Really?
I mean, they had no concept that we actually loved each other.
Mhm.
So that was one of the barriers that we had to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look back right after the war, and those brothers who spent months, some of them years, walking all over the South looking for
That's
their
right.
wives, looking for
That's,
their wives who had been sold away.
Mhm.
I read that.
That's
That is right.
that's
That's
the
right.
foundation that got us here.
Mm-hmm.
If there hadn't been a love, we wouldn't be here.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They needed that love. Black women needed that love after coming home from, being a domestic in somebody's house and, Brother White, rubbing her feet and, maybe cooking dinner. I mean, we've had to juggle so many different roles, but
We did.
love has always been, for me, very, very
Mhm.
strong.
Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
I have someone here who said, next time I'm in a relationship, I will make sure we read some of Beverly Jenkins together.
When I first started, and and I'm sure people are still doing that today, they were reading them together at night. People
Oh,
people were using them for cuddle time.
mm.
Brothers read my books. They like the westerns, but yeah, read them together, because then
Yeah,
you have a good time after. So we're gonna talk about that. But yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to express how you feel.
That's the problem.
Let them know in, and I know some people are not very verbal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I had a sister tell me that she didn't know she had a good man until she started reading my books.
Ah.
She said, I just thought he was just like, kind of boring. And, and I'm like, smack yourself.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And women would, give their arm and a leg for the man that you have, who treats you so well,
Mm-hmm.
puts gas in your car and, all of that. So yeah, enjoy reading my books together. Some people would, one night he'd read a chapter, the next night she'd read a chapter, or they switch off paragraphs, or especially Topaz is a great co-read, because it's funny, and it's a wagon train of women, and we got a sheriff and bad guys, and it's a shoot 'em up, and the brothers like that one.
They
So,
like that. Okay. Here I have a comment. That's my favorite thing about your novels. How love is the balm for all of the trauma and hurt both parties
Yes.
endure throughout their lives.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like Galen said, you all you got is each other.
Right.
That's all.
You got to find a way to, and that's why he had her, making mud pies. He
Right.
said,
Right.
we got to find a way to play, and
Right.
otherwise the weight of it will kill us.
Right.
So
Yes.
Black people are real good about finding ways to deal with the trauma
Mm-hmm.
and continue to get up in the morning and go to their job the next day. So
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. How many hours a day do you spend working on your books? In what city did you grow up?
I grew up in Detroit, East Side.
Mm-hmm.
I spend probably not enough time on my books, when because I'm always late, because I'm always playing with my 3 Facebook pages where my ladies and I reside, and I'm on Twitter, and I'm always on Twitter. I'm deep into Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
but I do 2 books a year. So
Okay.
technically, it should be 6 months per book. I write a lot more once the deadline fires start looking at my eyebrows.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm writing, then I'm writing 24/7, no dinner, no showers. Stories coming really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody's different. And if you're a writer out there, and people talk, well, you should write every day. No, because people got kids, kids, got school, and kids
Mm-hmm.
sick, and you're
Mm-hmm.
taking care of a parent, or
Mm-hmm.
write when you can.
Right.
You can.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I have a comment here. My 86-year-old mom and dad read her books together.
I love it.
Send them my love. A big old hug. I just love that. People don't think about, and that was one of the things when I first started and we were talking about the problems that Black romance writers were having. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in our community, we have these people who have been married for 50 years, who are holding hands after church going to the car.
That's right. That's
And
right.
the majority culture does not see that.
Right.
All the majority culture sees is is our pathos. All they see is the, the pain, which is why we got all this pain porn, on the
Mhm.
screen.
Yeah.
Give us some love.
Mhm.
Give us something else. Give me a black woman riding a dragon. Give me, you
That's
know,
right.
the
Tell them
family.
about.
Give me, and there's a lot of young black women that are doing the fantasy and the science fiction. So um, yeah. All right, I'm gonna stop talking. Ivan said last question.
Ivan said,
Let's see.
we're not gonna pay no attention to Ivan.
Well, there was one comment, one last comment. It says, Galen's quote about finding joy in this ugly life is one of my life's mantras. That's
Oh,
what someone said. Yeah.
Yes.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He had a lot of wisdom,
He
even though
did.
he was way over the top.
Yes, he was.
Way, I mean, this man was buying this woman the moon.
Yes,
Right.
he was.
Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Well, it seems as though we've come to the end of our hour. It should have been 2 hours.
It should have
I
been,
think so too.
I'll have to come back when you guys do another. You do the blessings books.
Okay.
Um,
The
it's,
blessing?
yeah,
Okay, let me write that down.
Okay.
bring on the blessings. It's
Okay.
about a sister who buys a historic black town with her
Hmm.
money, and it's set in the 20th century town that I created for my very first book. So it's a look at this town 100 years later.
Okay.
And
Okay.
she buys it and brings in foster kids to be raised by the senior citizens that are in the town. And it is, I'm on 11, book 11 now.
Mhm.
It is amazing. It's not a romance. It's more of a small town family kind of. A lot of
Mhm.
church groups reading it. Al
Mhm.
Roker has, I know Al Roker had an entertainment company, but Al Roker has optioned it for TV.
Mhm.
So, put that on your book club list. I think, a lot of little old ladies reading it. I'm doing Zooms with churches all over America with these women
Okay.
reading these books. So, which is fun.
Mhm.
We'll see you again.
That sounds good.
I,
So,
Thank
Thank you. And I have one comment and then I'm turning it over to Ivan because this comment sums it up. Um, this was wonderful. Thank you so much. You are my favorite author of all time.
Oh, you're gonna make me
and,
cry. Don't
and
make
can
me cry.
I just wanted to
and,
share that with you before I turned it over to Ivan.
Thank
and
you.
can I share something with her too? Beverly,
Yes, ma'am.
thanks again. It's so nice and easy talking to you and continue to write. And I'm going to buy them books. I'm going to buy that new book. I'm going to buy these blessing books.
Okay. All right. I got 41 books. So,
Oh,
Okay.
oh no. I went to your fan page and they got them all.
okay, good, good.
They was talking about, you got a sister part two, sister books or something like that. Women's book or the series on women or sisters or something like that.
Women who dare. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So thank you for taking the time and
You're welcome.
sharing with us. We loved it.
And
Thank
I want to thank everybody who showed up, everybody who came to this um, and supported the museum. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
very, 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 very much. I had a
And
ball.
thank you.
I had a ball.
Thank you. You made it happen. Thank you.
All
Thank you
right.
so much. That was fun. Thank you, Ms. Jenkins.
All right.
Yes.
I'm bowing out.
Thank you.
Ivan's going to get us.
No, I'm
Okay.
not. Thank you, everyone. I can honestly say it was a blessing. This evening is a blessing. Ms. Jenkins, Beverly, it's been great to meet you.
It's
Yes.
One thing that's clear from the moment I spoke to you and even read an email from you is that the personality and the trustworthiness, if you will, the intellectual trustworthiness comes through with every word you speak and every word you
thank
write.
you.
Yes.
I don't read romance novels, but I will be.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I'm telling you, and I'm serious. I'll be reading this with the next girlfriend for sure. So thank you. Um, I want to thank everyone for being here. I'll talk quickly about next month, and then I will close this.
Mhm.
Um, for April, excuse me, we do this bi-monthly. So for April, on Earth Day, April 22nd, we're doing a very special book club talk with author Dr. Keto Swan. looking at his book, an academic text, Paulu's Diaspora. It is a
Hmm.
look at international social and environmental justice movements as spearheaded by Black people across the diaspora.
Oh, good.
So this will take us to African America, but it actually starts in Bermuda, goes to the continent, and everywhere in between, right on birth, right on Earth Day. So I think we'll have a special take, and I invite
Mhm.
everybody to come back for that very special time.
Very good.
Um, you should be motivated to come to that by what you witnessed and experienced here tonight, hopefully. So I want to thank Elisa Rashid. I want to thank Carolyn Singleton for stepping up and leading this. Amber Mays and LaRonda Richardson, who everyone does not see, but whose work makes this possible. I also want to thank Jewel Newton, the docent who, quite organically, I believe, introduced
She
Beverly
did.
Jenkins and Indigo in particular
Yes, she did.
to the docent core. This wasn't the regular book selection. This was driven by passion, and I think we see that. And so the last things I'll do are two quotes that I wanted to start with. The first is in Beverly Jenkins' dedication, a quote from William Butler Yeats. It is to be regretted that effectual efforts were not made at an early date to furnish a history of the services of men and women of color.
Yes.
And so when I read that, it encapsulated so much of the work that she's doing by
Mm-hmm.
producing the novels that she's producing and
Oh,
building
Yes,
the world that we all want to imagine and touch.
yes.
But here's my last quote. This is the gem, and I'll say goodnight and ask Amber to roll the goodbye video. Here's my favorite quote from Beverly Jenkins. Thank you so much. I don't write weak women.
Mm.
Thank
I
you,
love it.
everybody. Good night.
thank
That's
you. Good night, everybody.